Hi guys, welcome to Social Anxiety Inside Out. This is session 32, and just to tell you a little bit about what these sessions are all about, um, the reason it's called Social Anxiety Inside Out is because I can relate to that label for so many years. Since the age of 19, I self-diagnosed um, with social anxiety disorder because I read the symptoms and it felt, you know, it described how I was feeling and the kind of things that I was thinking about. And what we talk about in these sessions is based on what's known as the three principles, or also known as health realization, where we look at, rather than the content of thought, we look at how our experience is created. And each week we have a special guest on who has been looking in the area of the three principles and having amazing results, not only in their own lives, but helping other people. And our special guest this week is Dr. Mark Howard. Mark is based over in California in the States, and he's a psychologist who has been looking in the, working in the three principles field. How long is it now, Mark? Is it over 30 years?
Yeah, 32 years.
32 years. Well, exactly my age then.
You were a baby.
Welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm really good. Nice to be here.
It's lovely to have you. So just to start off, I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about, how you come across the principles and a bit about your background.
Yeah, so want to give time to hear from people, so I'll make the story short and concise, but no less powerful in that I came across the principles because I wanted basically to be less of an angry man. I didn't fight or anything, but I would debate people and I would argue a lot. And it just so happened that a colleague of mine had connected with Sydney Banks, who had the insight that became the principles. And there was a Thursday night seminar he was giving, so I went to the seminar, and I really had a realization. I mean, an insight into these principles. So that was around 1982, and what I saw, like it is for anybody here who has had any realization about the principles, is that it's kind of an insight, I mean, like you don't think your way there. It just occurred to me at that time. It occurred to me that I make up my feelings. Feelings are made up. Not that they're fake, they're made up. And then I saw the next moment, it occurred to me that thought creates feeling. And then the next moment I saw that if I understood this, I could be happy. And so could my clients. But it really shifted me way, way beyond what I thought just as I was sitting there. When I left and drove home that evening, I felt great, but I didn't know how much it shifted me till the next day when I went back to my clinical practice. And I realized as I went into the office that I could not do anything that I was trained to do as a clinical psychologist. In those days, there were a lot of theories that I was, really well trained in, and I would use them, but I realized I could not do them. I really knew they were not the answer. Just as you were talking about how it just becomes quite natural for you to see that it's no longer necessary to just be dealing with social anxiety. It just was, I was certain about it. But that day I didn't have much to go for except thought create your feelings. I've shared this in a lot of videos, but that's what I saw. That's where it started. And it's been a thrill, this whole journey, because from that moment on, that day on, it was pure for me. I did not go to cognitive work. I didn't go to any other approach but to learn more about how to share the principles. And through 32 years of sharing them, gaining my own understanding for them more and more and more, because I was just telling a coaching client today, earlier this morning, who is working with me to become a practitioner of the principles, that I did not have any sense of mind or consciousness that Thursday night. I just saw thought, and I saw the nature of thought. So there was more to see, and there's always more to see. And through the process, I've also learned how to go about sharing this in a way that's impactful to people. I made many, many, many mistakes along the way, so to speak. So to speak. It's not really that so much of a fault thing, but I learned from just sharing these principles. So it changed my life. It changed my marriage for the better. It changed how I was raising my son, who was 2 years old at the time. It changed how I related to colleagues in this clinic, to the point that, I share this too, like 6 months into my working in this way and learning more about the principles, one of my colleagues came up and said, "I've been watching you and you've been changed, and I want to learn what you know, because you are just a different person." And that led to 8 mental health professionals meeting with me once a week for 2 years to talk about these principles. We listened to Sydney Banks tapes. We just talked together. So that was the beginnings. Yeah, did you want more, or did you have something else you wanted to speak to?
I guess a bit more around when you said it didn't make sense for you to, to apply everything you learned in the psychological world. Could you speak a bit more around that? Why it didn't make sense for you?
So, being trained in the States as a psychologist, you get trained in a lot of approaches, Freudian, Jungian approaches, Carl Rogers. There are some spiritual approaches and so forth that I was involving myself in, all with my heartfelt feeling. The whole reason I went into the field was this feeling in me that there was more to us than, there's just something more that isn't being realized. And so I was good at, what I was doing, but to tell you the truth, they changed, but I knew I wasn't reaching what I knew in my heart people could get to. I don't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. I just knew there was something, I would call it at that time, deeper. But what I must say about the power of realizing these principles, it must come from a realization. It must come from an insight. It's not an intellectual process, because you're waking up knowledge already in you that occurs within your own thinking, that raises your level of consciousness, And so I could say when I went into the clinic on Monday morning, I was in another state, or Friday, I was in really another state that I hadn't realized what this was. I was living in another level of consciousness. I was calmer. But when I stepped into the office, I realized, oh my God, what didn't make sense was how could I continue to work with people who have anxiety, depression, addiction issues, by, for example, doing Freudian analysis, or bringing them into realizing where in their past it started. It didn't make sense when all people needed to realize was not their thinking, but that thought created experience, that feelings we were analyzing were made up. They weren't real. So that's what I mean by it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense to work. Now I look at it like in the world of form. What I mean by that is it didn't make sense to work with what people were thinking or feeling. What made sense was to point them to what created all that. That's what I can now say was where I was on that Friday morning. And when I spoke from there to people, I was speaking from the truth that I knew. It was a different place to talk from. Before, I was talking from, what I knew of these theories and from my interpretations, my interventions, my assumptions, my diagnoses. And now I was speaking from the feeling of truth, which was that people are more than what they show up in, and it spoke to my heart that I was wanting to speak to waking up the knowledge they have. So that's what I mean that I changed the way I was working. See, it didn't make sense to work with a diagnosis anymore because that was just how thought was being manifested at that particular time. See, it didn't make sense to work in that world. But see, here's the thing. I want everybody to see this because you don't have to be working clinically to see the same thing. It didn't make sense for me to look at my wife in the way I used to look at her. It didn't make sense to go about being a parent the way I used to do it. It didn't make sense to keep evaluating my wife. That's what I used to do, huh? I used to evaluate her. Oh man, she's still deficient over here. She doesn't show me enough affection or whatever it can be, right? But it didn't make sense anymore to do that. So a realization of the principles has a power to bring you into another level of consciousness. Probably it works like this. Because of a change in thought, insight, you are in another level of consciousness already. And all of it goes hand in hand, and you're living at another level. That doesn't mean I didn't get caught up in evaluating my wife, but it didn't make sense to live there. It didn't make sense to do that. It would occur to me, man, you're off. Things would help me adjust to that. But for everybody listening, when you get a little insight, a little glimpse of these principles, however it comes to you, you'll start to see it doesn't make sense to do what you used to do. Because to me, living in this truth, this feeling, is more about having an understanding. So when I went back to my clients, it was really, I could really see that I could really I could work in a way that would take people deeper. What I always dreamed of doing or knew in my heart, all the way up to that moment. But I want you also to see that, I don't know if any of you have experienced this, where it does change you in the way you relate to life. You see, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense to keep going in this direction. Maybe you don't know how to do it well, but at least it's starting to show you that doesn't make sense anymore. And that's what I mean by it didn't make sense. Does that help?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. Thank you. I felt like asking you actually, how do you feel about all the different mental health diagnoses in the DSM manual? It must seem strange to you now after your experiences over the past 32 years. I'm just really intrigued in how you see it as a psychologist, because that was your manual before. That was like your Bible, wasn't it?
Well, and the whole idea that the whole idea behind something like a manual was, people were this. People were that, whatever it is you're diagnosing. So, if you wake up to the fact that all that you see when you see somebody with some of the behaviors that are in a category in that manual, that all you're seeing is the manifestation of thought at a certain level of consciousness, it doesn't make sense to label them at that level. That's just a level of thought. They are much more than that, so the work really is to wake them up to understand and connect more to what they truly are. Whereas, the manual influence us to think this is what people are. It limits our view of a human being, I think. This is just me, okay?
Yeah.
And now that doesn't mean when people traditionally work don't see changes, but it's really what you see as the truth. And the truth for me is people are not whatever you would diagnose them from. So why do that? It limits you. If you are sitting there trying to share the principles, you will limit yourself if you see people from that manual. It will keep you from really listening well to people. It will limit you because people are not that. That's just a form thinking has taken. And you see it too when people wake up to that just being the manifestation of thought, that whole thing, their feelings and behaviors that are called some kind of anxiety diagnosis or depression diagnosis or whatever. When people wake up to that, they're different. Same thing for me. I could have been diagnosed whatever it was in those days of this anger, But the minute I woke up to it, I wasn't that person ever again, I wasn't. Even though I might get angry or bothered, I wasn't truly the person that I used to be. Anyhow, so I don't look at people that way, and I mentor practitioners to help them be careful whenever they might be listening to a client and put them in a category. The minute you do that, you're listening to your own thinking. You're no longer listening to the human being. So, I think that I think people in insecure states of mind manifest some behaviors that find their way into that manual, because the manual is such that man, you can almost do anything and be in the manual. But I just want you to see it from the way I see it, and that is, all that is describing someone at a level of thinking. And your job is to help people find the realization of thought, so their level of thinking rises. If you see them with a diagnosis, now you will be guided by your thinking rather than listening to them and be guided by their humanness and your listening outside of your own personal thinking. So I don't use it. Now that doesn't mean you don't take responsibility of helping somebody who's in a very, very bad place. I mean, you want to know, and that's through thought, that's through your wisdom. If you're in a helping profession, you want to know if somebody's at risk for themselves or whatever, That doesn't mean you ignore things.
Yeah.
It just means you don't label somebody, because the principles tell you people are greater than whatever you can come up with. No, so, yeah.
Okay, well, I was thinking I've got some questions in. You ready to answer a couple of questions, Mark?
Sure, is this helpful?
Yeah, brilliantly so. Yes, awesome. I'm sure, hopefully the viewers agree as well. Okay,
Pardon?
this is quite a long question, so I'll read it to you once. If you need me to clarify, I will do. Okay, so this says, you are very clear about why and in what way the three principles are not a cognitive intervention. I still have some confusion about this, and I'd love to hear more. Specifically, is it possible to use, so to speak, the three principles as a cognitive intervention? But there is far more, deeper, a bigger understanding which allows for more than that. So it can be. Sorry, it goes on.
More what?
Let me just read the last bit. So it can be used as a cognitive intervention, but that is only to get a fraction of the understanding that is possible and what Sid Banks intended and saw for himself in Insight. I've been pondering this as I realise I'm using it as an intervention sometimes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's so. Actually, it's a really great question, and I'm listening because there's a lot to say to that one question, really. So, you're not, if you're looking to share as a coach, life coach, or a counselor, or any of the helping professions, you're not speaking at all to a person's thinking. You're not doing anything at all with their thinking. What I have gleaned through my learnings about a cognitive approach, that would focus as an intervention into people's thinking, what they're thinking. And this isn't about you looking there. You don't want to look there. You want to find a way to point people to the fact of thought, this spiritual energy that allows them to think. You want to always point to beyond the thinking that's being created, to what creates it. Now, I will talk to people with their thinking, and even when I told my clients on that Friday morning, thought create your feeling, I wasn't speaking from thinking, the actual thinking people do. I was thinking from the realization I had that it gets manifested, it gets created. So first of all, working with the principles is not working at all in the thinking people do. So you're not at all making interventions at all really into that. You're having more of a conversation or dialogue with people in a way that you can find some way to tell them where their experience really is coming from. So that's where you want to sit, first of all. That's the state that you want to sit in. And so I'm not, the other piece is what are you doing, what's you're listening about. So I'm not listening to come up with interventions. I'm not listening to come up with strategies. I'm listening to get curious about what's going on with this person that they're talking about this, they're bringing this up, they're thinking this way. So I'm having a conversation around, well, what do you think it is that's behind your thinking that way, or what are you thinking about? What do you make of the feelings that you're sharing with me? Or how is it that you think you're thinking that way about your spouse or about your job? I'm always getting very curious about what they're presenting. But the reason I am is because I want to be guided by the intelligence my client and I are connected to. So I don't want to have anything on my mind. I don't want to have an intervention handy. Because first of all, it's not about interventions, but secondly, I don't want to be having Mark Howard's personal thoughts interfere with my listening. My listening is going to be deeper than me. So that's the other piece. It takes a while to get a sense of what I'm talking about, but I'm trying to bring in, I'm trying to really kind of cover all of the points for this question. So what I have seen is that the principles, when you share them with people or find a way to share them with people, are to wake up in them their own knowledge of them, and you keep listening until that happens. So I'll say, geez, you know, that makes sense to you? Or like, again, this person that's doing life coaching and I working together today said that she doesn't see that what she's saying is getting into someone. So I said, well, ask about it. So she just felt, oh, that's great. I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know I could see, you know, like I'm talking to you about the principles, but it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. What's going on with that? You're letting this listening guide you to what? Point people deeper, away from their intellectual thinking, away from their own content of thinking. I don't want to have really anything to do with that content of their thinking, though I will talk to people about it. If somebody's sad about a loss, you know, I'm not going to say, well, we can't talk about that. Well, I've got to talk to you about the principles. I'll talk a bit about that, but I'm not going to try to make an intervention. I'm just talking to keep the relationship going and have an understanding for this person and be of my heart go out to the person. But I don't want to work with what they're bringing to the table. You see, it's in a your whole job is one thing is to point people to the nature of the principles. And the link is telling people about this creative process we're all a part of that we call thought, that brings about moment to moment a reality we're living in. And that's what you want people to get a realization about. You don't want people to get better thinking. You don't want people to be less involved in their thinking. You don't want to do anything with people about their thinking. You want to tell them the fact of where that thinking is created, as best as you know it. When you speak from your best understanding of that, you're in a different state. And I don't care how little you feel like you know. When you start sharing from there, you're going to have more impact than any intervention. One more piece. When people get an insight into the principles or into the nature of thought, they get their own interventions. So people will say, oh man, I just realized when I was home, I just realized, you know, I don't have to think everything I think. Another person will say, you know what, I just realized I'm calmer. And my negativity comes in, but I don't have to engage it. Another person says, I don't have to, it doesn't mean as much, it doesn't mean what it used to mean for me. So you'll just see that people will form their own ways of manifesting their realizations of thought. You don't have to do it for them. You just have to point to the spiritual nature of the principles. And all I mean by that is you just have to point to the fact that people are connected to an energy that creates their thinking, that creates the reality they live in. And you keep talking to them there. So I hope that helps. What do you think, Steve? Do you think that speaks to it?
I think so. I got a lot from that myself, so I'm sure the person who asked the question did. If you wanted to send feedback in about that, please do. Um, Mark, I was going to ask you before we go on to the next question. Could you speak a bit around what the principles are, um, what the principles mean to you, and how they're helpful for someone who hasn't heard about this before? I know it's hard to explain in a short period, but just for anyone who is new to this.
Well, I think at the end, I just realized, these questions are really good ones, and we have a short time to do them justice. And I don't know how you feel, but people connect with me. But okay, so again, Steve, that's pretty. That can consume some time, but let me just try to briefly speak to what you said. So the principles, for me, speak to hope. I've shared this in a number of presentations that the principles bring hope to a person. Even if they can't make sense of them, the feeling they get when they hear them brings hope. Mind is really just life, what created life, the intelligence behind the universe before anything was formed. And the hope there is we're all connected to one another because we're all part of mind. And the hope is because it's the intelligence of everything, we have an intelligence that will assist us. We're part of that. It's in us right now. So we always have a chance to be guided by a deeper intelligence than our own thinking. So that's the hope of mind. Thought is just this energy that creates. It is the bridge between the formless and the form. It's what allows a spiritual energy to become something. And through thought, through the fact that these principles manifest a reality we live in moment to moment, is through thought, through our thinking. And once it's manifest, everything follows. Everything immediately follows that thought-created reality. Our feelings, our behavior, everything follows immediately. Our biochemistry, everything. The hope with thought is, for me, that we're blessed in that we can recognize we have an opportunity to realize where our experience comes from. And that hope, because we can do that, it allows us to come back to our spiritual nature and find new insights into how to handle life. So there's much more to say. I'm just trying to do it justice in just spending a little time here. And thirdly, consciousness really is just an awareness of thought, the awareness of what we've created. That thought creates the reality, and then the experience of the reality, the truth factor of the reality, is because of consciousness. Consciousness makes it seem locked in true. And that's why it takes a realization, an insight, to really transcend your own thinking, because when you're in your own thinking, it looks true. When I evaluated my wife and I said, she is limited here, that was true. Now, when I had an insight and stopped doing that, she became more than I ever imagined. But it needed an insight and a realization of these principles for me to transcend my usual thinking. So how I've seen it, I've just shared with you a few ways in which I've seen it help people, but it provides people answers to what they're afraid of, really. It helps people transcend their insecure thinking. And I've seen that from day one. That first day I went back and I just talked about my realization. I've seen change occur continually for all this time. Now that doesn't mean it happened right away. There were some clients that I had to just keep at it. But that's what you do. You know, you just keep at it. You just keep listening. You just keep asking, well, how can I say it again to you? Really, that's really all you're about. And you get better and better and better at doing that. I've seen people where I didn't even answer their question. I was still trying to fumble for an answer, just listening to try to answer something. And as we just talked about it, people came up with their own insights without me even having to talk about it. I've seen so many ways in which the principles have manifested themselves through a human being's realization. And, you know, anyhow, so that's that. I just wanted to share that with you. On my website, I go deeper into the principles if you wanted to go to my website. But they're all over the videos now about the principles. But what I see with the principles all the time is hope. There's hope in the principles. Now, the principles themselves aren't hope. They're just nothingness. They're the spiritual energy. But what I see in them is hope for humanity, hope for me. In whatever I'm caught up with today, I might see differently tomorrow. And that's a beautiful thing to give people. And that's what I give people all the time. You know, even if they are leaving my office and they're saying, you know what, I still don't get it. I say, well, that's okay. We just keep talking about it. You're going to see something. You may not see it right away, but if you just hang in there and we keep talking, you and I together, in our dialogue, listening to you, we'll see something together. And that hope, that just calms people down. They just feel, I don't know, they just are looking for that in their lives. And it doesn't matter if they don't get it right away, you know. They'll hang out with you. It's a beautiful thing. It's just a beautiful thing, because when I used to work with people through their diagnoses and apply all of these theories, you know, if they had an insight once a year, that's, you know, that would be fabulous. You know, that's wow. But when you see that insights are limitless, that every human being can rise to another level of understanding, another level of consciousness, the rest of their lives, man, that is a thrill. That's just so hopeful. Same with my marriage. You know, I still let go of more and more thinking about my wife, and I just see her more and more through my whole life. And we're going to celebrate our 43rd year of being married. So that ages me a bit, but I could tell you what the principle, understanding the principles, what they've done is allow me to see her who she truly is more and more and more as my level of understanding rose. And it's just a beautiful thing to see with people. Anyhow, I hope that helped.
You did a great job. You did a really great job in that period of time. That was awesome.
Any other questions there?
Yeah, there's another one come in. I wanted to ask you something that popped into my mind, which is gone now. It will come back because I really wanted to ask you it. So I'll read out the question now. Okay, so it says, can you talk a bit about the principles and simple anxiety reactions when it seems as though I'm not really thinking my stormy thoughts? My thinking will seem disengaged, I guess I would say, and then suddenly my body will be reacting as if it's having a panic attack, stomach churning, breathing change, etc. And it will seem as though I'm not thinking anxious thoughts. Any experience with this kind of thing?
Sure, a lot of experience, with it, and again, so my take on that question today, a couple of things. One is, I think you've already shifted. I don't know you, whoever answered that question, but to just look to see if it has something to do with thinking means you have already shifted. So I want you to really appreciate that. When our human beings are already in a reaction, it gets more and more difficult to see it as thought created, because so much takes over. But if you keep pointing yourself to the fact that thought creates feeling, and keep pointing to that, you'll start to see it more and more. You'll just start to see yourself, feeling calmer, maybe having a day without it, maybe having half a day without it. It doesn't appear as a complete 100% perfect solution. It appears to me, it appears in my working with people with anxiety, a kind of gradual process where people start to have better feelings. The other piece is there's a mystery here. Sydney Banks talked about the formation of thought. We'll never see it. It's a mystery how thought happens. Why you're having a certain thought today and not another day. And he said it's just a mystery, and you just have to learn to live with it. And I think sometimes we are living in the experience. We're living in our reality, and we can't see its thinking. We just don't. I live a lot of my life outside of teaching the principles, not having thoughts, this is my thinking. I just don't. When I'm walking to get a cup of coffee or something, I get a cup of coffee. I'm not thinking all of this is being created from my thinking. So now I wish I could see it in some of the areas better, but I just keep pointing myself. Keep pointing myself to the principles. Maybe I read a little more of Sydney Banks. But when I'm in an emotional reaction, whatever it is, it's hard to know it's my thinking. See, because when you know what you're thinking, you haven't done that. Right here. When I have a reaction to somebody, let's say I'm bothered by a friend, I'm bothered by my wife. When I wake up to the fact that that was my thinking creating bother, Mark Howard didn't bring that about. It just occurred to me. Really, if you look at that, you will see that somehow you got a thought about your thinking because you started to look in the direction of learning or understanding these principles. See, you don't bring your awareness of these principles to yourself. You do, but you yourself doesn't. See, Mark Howard can't do it. It comes to me. It occurs to me. And what I have seen is that the more I open up to understanding the principles, the more it occurs to me that it's this, what I'm experiencing is coming through thought. This is a big one. This is a big one because it speaks to why you don't want to give people strategies. And it speaks to people coming to peace without coming to peace, not being able to change a mood, to take your experiences in stride. Even that is something that occurs to us. It's not something you can keep using. Why? Because when you're in it, you're in it. Now, again, the hope is, always the hope is, that because you are looking in the direction of within you, within your thinking, you will hear a thought that's telling you where your experience is coming from. See, that's the mystery Sydney Banks talks about. I think, I don't know really, but I think he's pointing to. And it's a beautiful thing here because it allows you to come to peace with whatever you're in. I wish I wasn't still so bothered. I still get thoughts that get me into bother. Now the beauty of this is that it occurs to me pretty quickly. Oh man, you just kind of lost your way. And then it occurs to me pretty quickly to let it go. See, these are just occurring to me. I don't have a strategy I follow. And I want you all to get a feel for this because this is the way to go about it. I shared this story with another coaching client of mine Friday. Like, I've been walking around, I've been doing more walking, and in the walking I'm listening to Sydney Banks tapes that I have. And I heard something really deep on the tape, you know, and I came to really be peaceful. So I'm walking through the neighborhood, I'm really peaceful. I'm really in a very peaceful, loving place. And somebody's walking toward me and they're taking up more space on the sidewalk than I think they should. And all of a sudden, I'm in bother. You know, here I am, I've been in this peaceful place, now I'm in bothered by this. Then it occurs to me, oh my God, Mark, look what just happened. You just kind of got yourself into bother and you were in this peaceful place over what you think is somebody taking up too much space. Then it occurs to me to let it go and get back. I'm telling you this story because I want you to see. You will see a way out. You will. But you can't make it happen. You just can't. It looks like you're making it happen, but you can't make it happen. You just get a thought at a higher level of consciousness because you've had some insight into the principles. And if you can live with more peace about the places your thinking takes you, and know that at some point you're going to be at a different level, that's how to do it, because you'll see your way out of it. Now, this person who asked the question, you're already seeing your way out of it. Maybe not to where you'd like to, because you're already talking about thinking. You're already looking in the right direction. You've already shifted. I know we want to feel better. I know we don't want a panic attack. I know people don't want to feel bad about themselves. And I will talk to people when I'm with them. I will ask them, well, what is in the way of you seeing more? I will, when I'm working with them, get curious about that. And maybe in the dialogue we'll see something that they get a little more insight into and are able to hear thought more. But you have to see that the principles are so powerful that when you are in something, it looks real. And the beauty of this, the hope of this, is that the next moment, a new thought can occur at a higher level of functioning that will take you out of it. So that's my thinking there about it. And I wanted to get to the piece here of, I call it kind of living in stride with the level of consciousness you're at the state of mind you're in, at the quality of thinking you're in. Kind of come to more peace or taking in stride, even though it's dramatic.
It's beautiful, Mark. I really hope that helps the person who asked the question. And
what's that, Steve?
I was just saying that was beautiful, Mark, and I hope it helps the person who asked the question. I just wanted to add to that because from my own experience, I guess that since I've been looking into the principles, there are times like you described where there's not really much on my mind, but I'm still not feeling great, and I guess just knowing that experience is created from thought, even though you can't see it, is a relief to me. And
you're already in a different state.
Yeah. And I know the person who's asking it has seen things for themselves.
Yeah. Look, I told this story at the Innate Health Conference in Tikkun. When I've been traveling a lot internationally and all in the last couple of years to help train people and talk to people about the principles. And I told people, you know what, whenever I know I'm going to fly, I get nervous. Not about flying. I love the flight. I love flying. I could relax and go to sleep. But I just get nervous as hell. I'm a nervous Nelly, they call it over here. When I lead up to going to the airport, packing, and all of this, it takes me over. I wish I could go about it better. I really do. And, you know, I supposedly know all about the principles, huh? I just don't see it here. I just don't see it. So I take it in stride. And my wife kids me all the time about it, and my colleague Kathy Casey, who I teach a lot with, saw me like this, and she kids me all the time about it. Now, I want to tell you something, though. My last trip to London, no, to New York, I did a presentation in New York. And I was in the airport, sitting down at the boarding to board the plane, and it was delayed. It was delayed a total of 5 hours. Now, I surprised myself because I was completely calm. I was really just taking it in stride. And an hour and a half into it, I realized, holy cow, I'm calm. I wasn't at all jittery. I wasn't a nervous Nelly. And I didn't do anything to bring that about. I just was in another state. Now, folks, when I was in there, I could maintain it. I lived that the whole 5 hours. So I would walk around the airport. Something would come for me about what to do. You know, go sit and have a coffee. Go here. I was completely in that feeling state. And when I was in it, and I realized I was in it, I could keep myself there. Now, when we finally got to the airport, at 12 midnight at New York, my baggage was delayed another hour and a half. I was still calm. Now, I don't know how that happened. I wasn't doing exercises. I wasn't, every once in a while I remember, oh, wait a minute, keep yourself calm. Don't get into your usual thinking. And I could use it. And then it all worked out. The bag showed up an hour later. They announced it, so I waited, and I got through it. All I'm telling you here is, here I am, a nervous Nelly. I know it's thought. I'm still a nervous Nelly. And then all of a sudden, I'm not that. In the same circumstances, I'm not that anymore. And it's just, I don't know what to say about that, really. All I'm telling you is my experience through the years of it is that you just have to see that it will occur to you. More will occur to you if you keep yourself pointed in this direction, and don't take yourself so seriously when you're troubled. And again, I'm telling you something to do. There will be times you will take yourself seriously. You can't do something until it occurs to you of what's going on. And even that calmness, I didn't bring it about. I didn't say, well, do a relaxation exercise. Listen to a Sydney Banks tape. I didn't do any of that. I just sat there. And an hour and a half into it, I was reading a magazine, and I just realized, oh my God, you're calm about this. So it's going to come to you too. That's the hope. So I hope that helped. I really hope. I don't want you to get on the stories. I want you to get the feeling of what I'm trying to point to by the stories.
Thank you, Mark. Have you got time for one more question, or do you need to?
Yeah, I have about 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay, this is quite a deep one, so do your best, okay? Our thoughts come from universal mind. We are of mind, therefore our thoughts, negative and positive, are all part of the design. It is that when we wake up, neither matter to us in a great way. We simply exercise our free will to be happy and creative via our thinking. And that is what was intended and what humanity still heads towards. When I saw that unhelpful thinking as part of the design, this really opened up a whole new world for me. What is your view on this?
Well, I think you have the feeling of the principles. I just want to point to a few things of what was said, okay? Yeah. But I think the feeling of it is there. Again, the principles have no say at all about whatever's formed. It has no say. The principles are beyond the form. They don't even think negative, positive. All it is that you've always been and will always be a part of mind, the spiritual nature of all of us, of life, before it was in form. And it has form because it got manifested in form, and part of that is your thinking. But even thought does not have a comment about your thinking, whether it's negative or positive. So they don't have a design on you thinking negative or thinking positive. It's just designed that you would think your way through life. That's all that the design is that you will know life through thought. That's the way you're going to know life, moment to moment. But there's no design for you to have a negative thought or a positive thought. There's just a design for you to be alive and know life so you can live. It has no comment on what you create at all. You're meant really to live in deep, happy feelings, feelings you don't even know are so deep. To wake those up. That's what you're meant to live in. That's what you came from. So there's no design for you to have negative or positive thoughts. That's just the level of consciousness of the world we came in. The level of consciousness we came in has taught us to be frightened and angry, joyful, whatever it is. But that's not the principle's design. The principle's design are for you to be alive, taking your spiritual nature into form, and to live here, you're given the power to have thinking, to think. But also, you have the ability to have levels of consciousness, so you can always transcend whatever you're creating. But honestly, this is what I heard in the Sydney Banks tape that I shared that story with you. He always points us to the fact that it's always love and understanding. But it's deeper than we could even think love is. It's deeper than we know right now, because he said, you have such deep feelings of love and understanding that you forgot them. So really, that's what the principle. So you have the feeling of the principles, you really do. I just wanted you to see that there's no design involved with the principles. They don't have a purpose because they are you. They are you coming to life. You will never lose your connection to mind because you are mind. And mind is a formless energy. It has no purpose. See? So there's no design except that you've come to life and you need a way to, know life. But the negativity and positivity is because of the level of consciousness we came into. You see? You see? There's levels of consciousness where no negativity exists. That's what Sydney Banks was pointing to. So I hope that helps. I really wanted to get to that design piece. I want you to see that you're more than a design. It's no design. People talk, there's a system behind it. That's an idea. It's just a way to talk about it, really. But if you look deeper, it's just more of what I tried to point to there. Well, I just love being part of this, Steve. I've got to wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that was really useful, that point you just made. Brings it back to the simplicity of it. It's not, the principles aren't saying anything, it's just like gravity is there, the principles are there, pre-existing. It's not, doesn't have an idea, I guess.
Yeah, you see, you don't want to see. The principles are you, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You, and it's you before you came into being a thinking being. But there was no design for you to have negative or positive thinking. It was designed to just give you the ability to have thinking. That's all. Anyhow, if you want to, I know I didn't do as much. It was pretty deep what we've talked to, and if you want to come back at some point later in the year, Steve, and do a part 2 to this, I would love to. And
Thank you.
You know, if anybody wants to email me, can I give my email?
Yeah, of course.
So it's Dr. Dr. the abbreviation Dr. Mark M-A-R-K Howard Howard. So Dr. Mark Howard at Comcast COMCAST.net.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Mark. It's been a real pleasure. I'll let you go now. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you same time next week. Thanks again, Mark.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again. Bye.